How you doing? Any question before we start in a few minutes? Albert dropped the file for you in the chat if you don't see it on Canvas. Thanks, Albert. Yes. To answer your question, yes. I am working on a track for computer programming because they have the IT cybersecurity in place, but employers are looking for programmers as well. So Jennifer McDaniel is the director of apprenticeship. She's working with me to set up the ones for computer programming. But yeah, you can fill out that form. We are meeting the employers tomorrow, and some employers, they don't mind taking students with very little or minimal experience. So, and then some, they're looking for a specific type of experience. And that varied in pay, but even with the apprenticeship, since it's a position, it's paid. You have to go through probationary period, which is a little bit lower than the normal pay. So some company, they mentioned that they start at minimum wage. Some companies start higher, as I was telling my student yesterday. So like Converge One, they are an IT service company in Ontario. They hire a little bit hot, they pay a little bit more for the entry. And then after you pass the probationary period, you're looking at 15, sometime 18 or higher, it depends. So yes, if you're interested, just apply and then we'll set up the courses next semester and you can go through it. I will likely be one of the faculty that teaches those. What type of work? It's mainly right now I have IT based, so support based, troubleshooting. They do have companies that work with cloud, so you will be assisting in various tasks from basic level technical support to a little bit more advanced. It all depends on the organization. And then the super entry level would be like help desk, where people would call and say, I don't have internet, or I don't know why my printer is not working. So you would see something like that. And then there would be city and county that are looking for programmers to replace the people that are about to retire. So these positions are on track to possibly lead to completely permanent position. So that could be from, working with water district to courts to prison systems so there are a lot of them are healthcare based when we deal with counties like hospital. So you can be doing IT support in the hospital. You might be working on some scripting. So it could be various type of task. You can find the notes on Tuesday if you go into Canvas and click on module. I'll share screen. So since it's 6 o'clock, we'll go ahead and get started, okay? And if you go to Canvas, what happened to my Canvas? Let's see. If you go into your course and then module, and then you look on, you scroll down to Unit 3 module. It says Chapter 7 notes is for Tuesday, okay? All right. So if you have questions, please let me know, or you can unmute and ask. Okay. I periodically check chat, but when I'm lecturing, sometimes I'm not very good at doing that. But anyway, so we're doing lab today, which is we are working with Set. So I want to introduce Set STL. Some of you already took 17C, or you are in those, the 17B and 17C courses this semester. But since we work on Set this week, it's a perfect time to look at how we would program sets and what that would consist of. So just to do introductory on the set, I'm going to minimize this real quick. So STL, Set STL is, we would use this for this particular lab. And in the C++ library, the container, the way it's designed is that it would have a sorted set of unique objects. So keep in mind that it has a weak sorting mechanism. And as we learn in the discrete math portion on Tuesday, that the element needs to be unique and it only would occur once. So keep that in mind. You don't have repetition of the value. So if you already have a 10 in a set and you're trying to insert another 10, right, it's going to check to see existing value through the iterator. And then if it's, it's comparing, and if it sees there's a 10, it's not going to insert another 10. So duplicates are not allowed. We don't want duplicates in the set container. The values of the elements set cannot be modified once it's in the container. So that means that when we insert it, let's say I insert 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, technically we don't update those values once it's already inserted. What we can do is we can remove it and then we can insert a different value. So once the elements are inside that set, it is static. It's not changeable. So as it is, that it's always going to be a constant. And you can use loops in order to have it automated to insert the element, which is what you would see in some of the program today. So we know that we can insert, we can clear the elements, we can remove, and we'll talk about the member functions in this STL. So set containers, it says that it's generally slower than the unordered set container because it needs to have the sorting. And accessing individual elements, you're going to use the key. So that means that we have to have an identifier, which is the key, in order to really point to that element. And it allows direct iteration in the subset. And iterators just means that it is a way that we can point to the position or the location of that element in that container. So if you think about pointer, pointer is a way we can use pointer as iterator. And you see this in data structure in C++. So for inserting element, what we can do is we can extend the container by adding or inserting new elements into that set. They could be numbers, right? So what we've been working with so far is different type of numbers. And what that will do is think of it like a vector. So when you insert it, it increases the size of the container or the dynamic array, right? So it is just a location in the memory where we would have these values stored. And if you insert 5 elements, it would increase the size to fit the 5 elements. That's what it's saying. Now, the elements are unique, so the insertion operation, so when you do you use the member function insert, what that will do is it first needs to check to see if that value already exists or not. If it already exists, it won't add that to the container. If it doesn't exist, then it will add that value, okay? So it has to do that in the back when you issue the insert function. So now it says it checks whether the inserted element is equivalent. So it's doing the comparison. So if you're trying to insert 10 and 10 is not there yet, it's not in the container, then it's going to say, okay, now it's going to place that value into the container. So if it's already there, the value is not inserted, as we said. And then it's going to return the iterator to the existing element. So if the function returns the value. Now we would be able to use this container to store, right, the value as in elements, and it should be sorted. So what we're going to do is we're going to experiment with it a little bit to see what the compiler is going to give us. What if we don't have it sorted? What if we put in a higher value in the front, like in the first index? What's going to happen then, right? So it says that the elements are always inserted in its respective position following this order, and that's why there's a sort mechanism, is that it would know that the following value after the first would be higher. This is how they created the function. So for the parameters, it would determine the number of elements that's inserted and which values they are to be initialized. So in the first example, you would see that we would include IO streams. So we would have C in and C out, mainly C out so we can see what's going on, right? Because it's still going to operate. It's going to execute what you tell it to. But as human, we want to verify that those values are in place. Then second, we want to include set, the set STL. So it's important that you do that. Here we have the main function. So now you can also put using namespace std up here, right? Since I didn't do that, I have to include that in the following. So here we say that we set the data type for our container, our set, to be storing integers. So you would see the type here. And then this is basically a label for my set called its name. We basically give it an identifier or a label called my set. On line 7, again, what we want is we want to create an iterator, and we're going to call it or IT. Then on line 8, we would have pair, and this member function, what that will do is it's going to utilize, and you would see the iterator and the value that you would insert as you go through your program. So here what we have, we would say that it's going to be part of the set container, the iterator would be bool type, and then our RET would be the identifier for the pair. So in the line, on line 11, we have a for loop. What that does for us is it's gonna automate the insertion, right, using the index. So we would start with 1 because we want to take that I value, the value of I, and we want to multiply it by 10. So what you're having to do there is once it goes through the loop, it's gonna first add the 10, then it's gonna add the 20, and it's gonna add the 30, 40, 50. It stops at 50 because we have the max value here in our for loop is equal to 5, okay? Now, if you have it less than, instead of less than or equal to 5, then it's going to stop at 4. But we want to go from 1 to 5, and we would take 1 times 10, it's going to give us 10, insert that. 2 times 10, it's going to give us 20, insert that, and so forth. So this is allowing you to initialize the value in your set from 10 to 50. Then on line 13, this is another way that we can also insert the value. Now, since you already have a 20 from the for loop on line 11, when it try to execute line 13, what's going to happen is it's going to compare that 20 value to the existing set that was done from line 11. It's going to say, oh, 20 is already in place. We're not going to add the 20, right? It's not going to add the 20. So therefore, that second 20 is not going to be inserted into your set container, okay? Now, what we want is, because for this right here, we want the if statement, so that way our iterator, it is going to point to the 20, because at that, after this line, after line 15, what we have is we're going to try to insert after 20, 20, 24, 25, and 26, okay, which is on line 17, 18, and 19. So when you're working with the set, what you want to use the iterator for is a place, right, or a way that we can point to the position where we would execute additional tasks. So for 18, 17, 18, and 19, we want to insert 24, 25, and 26 after 20. Then line 21 and 22 simply shows you that you can also, this is a different technique to also have a subset insert into your set container. So what we have is we have an array 5, 10, and 15, which is a subset, a different set. And we're going to treat it as a subset, and we're going to use that subset to include that in our main set container. So we have an array called myInts, and we have 5, 10, and 15. Then we're going to use mySet, and we're going to insert that subset there. And notice that you want to, the parameter here, you want to say where that value, those values are coming from, myInts and myInt plus 3. So since you have the 3 values here in that array, you want to say that in your parameter for line 22. After we have inserted the subset, and created our set and insert additional values to it, we would go ahead and tell it to see out so that way we can see what our container holds. Okay? Now, the begin here, and in the next one, it's going to talk about that. So it's gonna, for the next for loop, what we're using that next for loop is gonna be that we need to access the value inside that set as we want to show what those values are, right? So we would create a for loop so we can access each of the element that's in the set container. Very much like how you would create an array and you would initialize the value and you would use a for loop to access the index so that way you can identify or see out the values inside the array. Very much like that. It's a container and we're using the index to see the elements, okay, the element values. So we would have the second for loop for that on line 25. And then following that loop inside the loop body, we would have it see out. And then for the 27, that's going to have it drop to the new line. And then we would return 0. That completes the program. Okay. So I have the program here. And let me zoom in a little bit so that way it kind of fits. Okay. Here's my program. And then when I click run, right? Now, you can have it see out in each of the steps on the insertion. For example, right? Like after line 11, I can actually have it show that's the original set after line 11. And then after line 13, show it again, right? After line 19, I can show it again. But we didn't do that in the example program. So what happens is it's only going to show once when it gets to the end right here. It's going to take everything that we started with the first for loop, and then the additional insertion for 24, 25, 26, and then the 5, 10, and 15, and it's going to include all of that because that's our complete program. And then it's going to show you everything. So notice that even though we insert the subset later on in the program, because the way the STL, the library, right, it's actually comes out pre-sorted. It's sorted, okay, 5 through 50 in order, ascending sort, okay? So for the first question, the first exercise, I want you to use that example and I want you to write that program as shown in the example. Then you need to add in, and you can do it in different ways, right? Like a lot of the students, they would keep my set.insert and then they would use the iterator and insert 30, 40, 50, 60. Okay, or you can create another subset for 30, 40, 50, 60, and then follow the same step as line 21 and 22 to insert those values. And remember, we have 4 values in that subset. So any way you want to approach it, you can do it multiple ways, okay? So what I want you to do is after you build the example program, test it, then you're going to insert 30, 40, 50, and 60, okay? So edit the program, have those values inserted. Then you're going to run it and you're going to look at the output and you're going to tell me. Notice that we already had 30 from the beginning, 40, and 50 from the beginning. So after you have your subset inserted, you would see that 60 is going to get added after 50. And it's going to disregard the second insert of 30, 40, and 50 because those values have to be unique and they were already in the set. So make an observation like what I just mentioned, right? What do you see right? Explain why they were not inserted 30, 40, and 50, those values. Then take a screen capture to show your result and your code. That will be okay too. Okay. Are you clear on exercise 1? Any question? Okay, no question? Okay, so go ahead and work on exercise.
Professor, I had a
Yes,
really quick question. So, like,
sure.
for the example one, so with the loop, instead of it I being a one, it would start off from 3, and then the I equal to or greater than or equal to sign would be to 6 in our case, or that's
Yeah,
the
so
only item.
if you want to use the for loop, like number 11, then you would, yeah, so you can start at 3, 4, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, if you want to multiply it by 10, then you can start at 3 and you can go up to 6, so less than or equal to 6.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah, another way
uh,
that you can do it is like line 21 and 22.
okay, but those, I mean, essentially, if we just do one of those edits, then that's acceptable.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
However you want to approach it, as long as you can insert the, the values. So technically 30, 40, and 50 will not get reinserted again, even though you tell it to, right? So I want you to see that, but 60 is going to get added, yes.
So anything from the line 17 to 9, that's going to be completely neglected, or
Oh, it would still run. You still have the same program. All you're doing is you're going to introduce 30, 40, 50, 60 as an additional inserts.
okay.
Mhm. Okay, and any other questions? So to clarify, use example 1, write statements to insert 30, 40, 50, 60, rerun the program, see what the output would be, right? It should add the 60 at the end. Okay, and check to see if it, if it add 30, 40, 50 twice. No, right? So, and then explain, right? Make an observation and then provide the screen capture. Okay, so this is the example. So you want to have additional insert. And you can use IDE or you can use online compiler. That's fine. That's your choice. And if you're using online compiler, just make sure that you would have a way to save your CPP file, right? Log in, and so it saves it on cloud, or you can download it. In the case where if you lose the document and you have to recreate it, you don't have to start from scratch. Any question on 1? Okay. So make sure we check syntax, right? If some, simple things like missing symbols, semicolon, parentheses, or bracket, curly bracket, stuff like that. Typo, that usually would stem the error. Okay, and then make sure we have the proper STL. Okay. So as you, some of you probably finished number one, and some of you are working on number one, but I'm going to explain number two. Okay. So as you do number two, you can refer to the example. You can edit the one that you created. That's fine. But I want you to create a whole new set that contains different numbers. Okay. Like, for example, you can, if, you know, for me, I try to work efficiently. So if I need to modify, I would say, let's say I wanted to use, you know, instead of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, I can use 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, right? Those are still integers. So a quick way that you can modify that for number two is to change 10 to 100, or change 10 to another value, multiply it by 20 to give you different values, okay? So basically for number two, what I want you to do is I want you to create a whole new set with different values. You can use number one, program and edit it, okay? And then I want you to also insert different values to your new set in the second program, okay? So you can insert different values, put the number of your choice. The whole point in this is to be able to have you better understand how to use insert member function and how to use set STL. Okay, and how to work with the loops, or if you're using the member functions with the object. So what I want you to do is I want you to recreate something like number one, use different numbers for your sets and insert different numbers. Take the screen capture of your code and output, and please explain what you did. You don't have to be extensive with it. A few lines would be okay, right? What you insert and what you attempted to insert, and then what's the output. Any question? Okay, so after we complete the number one, adding that subset, we can work on number two. So modify your program from the first exercise to contain different numbers in the set. You can rewrite it if you want, so you can practice. Okay. And then you're gonna insert new numbers to exercise 2 program. Take screen capture and then explain your result. Any question?
Professor, I'm still kind of lost on two. So
Mhm.
are we just, do we just take the existing code from the previous question and then we just add on the additional line, the number two, or?
You can edit the first program and use completely different numbers. So for number 2, I want you to use completely different numbers. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So instead of inserting 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, you can do, instead of multiply it by 10, you can multiply it by 100. So you can have 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. Or you can simply manually insert, right? There are 3 ways that we learn to insert in the first program, whichever one you chose. So I need to see completely different numbers for your set, and I need to see different numbers for additional inserts in the second program. Okay.
Uh, but like, what's up with the line of code that was like before number two? What is that supposed to mean? Be? Oh
Which
no,
one?
it was in the document.
So number 1, you edit the example, you create the example program, and then you insert these values to this. Okay. Just like how we insert 5, 10, 15, you're going to add another statement to insert 30, 40, 50, 60. Okay. As you
Oh, okay,
mentioned
okay.
to,
I think.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So you have to
Okay,
have that
yeah, okay.
program, and then you add in either a loop, or you can have my set insert 30, my set insert 40, and so forth. However you want to approach that, or you can create another array, right, to add it as a subset. But I want you to create the example program and then insert values 30, 40, 50, 60 to it.
Professor,
Sure.
what is it for? I don't understand, or ret.
So it is just a name for the iterator. It's the identifier for the iterator. And the iterator is a pointer. It points to the position of the elements. So so basically you can point to like the second element, the 5th element, the 100 elements in your set by using the iterator. Okay. So in the line, let me see. So here, basically you declare what that iterator is called, just like how you would declare a variable, just like how here we declared our set. It says that it's a set of integer called my set. Line 7, it says that using this set, we have an iterator called it or it. Okay?
Got it.
So, yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. In programming, all we're doing is we identify the location, that location points to another location in memory, and that's how it operates, right? So the iterator, its job is to allow access to the elements in the set. Without it, we cannot have access. Just like think about how, in the array, we would use index, right? Like that's the position. So iterator, because it's sorted, it's going to default to the first element in that container. Any other questions for exercise 1 and 2?
I have a question about the ret as well. I'm like a bit confused. It has two, like you have set and you have iterator inside of it. Is bool the data type of ret?
Bool is used, yes. So when we use the ret down here is when we use the bool type here. Okay. So when it points to the element, the second element, which is 20, right? So we declare that here. So it's saying that the pair, because we need to have it pass as a pair later on down here, because you would always have the iterator and the value. So that way it would say that, oh, this is the position and I'm going to put that value here. This is the next position and I will put that value here. So this pair part of the member function is to allow us to include that in the parameter down here. Okay, so what we're doing is that in line 15, it says that if ret second is equal false, it's gonna go to the first. So what it's doing is it's instead of using 10 as the first element, it's gonna now point to 20 as the first element, because we want to insert 24, 25, and 26 following 20. Okay, so that way these will be following this right here. Okay, so now what the iterator does is going to point to 20, right, as the insertion point. It would access that 20 and then it would insert 24, 25, 26. So that way we can pass the parameter with the pair, the iterator, and 25. So it's going to point and add, point and add. Okay, so ret is just a name. Okay, and that would be used. So second and first right here is just another way that we identify the position of specific value. If you want to test it, comment out that line and see if it's going to throw you an error. Okay. If we just simply skip 15, what will happen when we do the insert 24, 25, 26? So you can play with it a little bit and see why certain statement needs to be included. Why do we have to point to certain position, and be able to understand it a little better, right? So this is one approach. Of course, you guys know that programming, we have many ways to write a program. Other questions?
Professor, I did compile the program. I altered the, I mean, according to what number one is asking, it's still exiting for me. Like, what exactly, can I just share maybe my screen and share it, or is there
Are
no
you
time?
getting an error, or are you?
I'm getting, it's exited segmentation fault.
Okay, and you using a for loop, or what you doing? So hold on one second. Let me enable screen share because it doesn't have that default. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, wait one moment. So, okay. Okay, right here. Do you see the screen?
You have the scroll all the way to the top. Let me see. Do you have set include? Okay. My set insert 30.
Oh, is my set insert red equal? That's supposed to be
Well, I
30,
want you
or-
to do the example for number 1. I want you to do the example to start. Why don't you do the example to start? And then you need to add more lines to insert 30, 40, 50. So go to line 10 and change I to equal 1. And then I is, okay, that change that to 5. Okay. All right, and then go to 16, 17, and 18, make that 25, 24, and 26. Okay, so let's run it as the program to start. Okay, that works. So now what you need to do is you need to add additional, don't change it, add additional
Okay.
statement to reinsert 30, 40, 50, and 60.
So my set insert IT 30. Forty.
You forgot 50.
Oh, 50. Okay.
Okay, what do you see? It added
Okay,
60.
so okay,
So
so I said okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, to start, when you're using the iterator, you need to build that from the first element all the way through the 5 elements. So let's go to the left. Let me see. On your line 10, I believe, the for loop, you originally had it before as 3. It did not like that because
No.
no, you have to, because you have to position it so that way it would build out and expand out your set. Then now another way that we can insert, scroll down, you can repeat number 20, line 24 and 25 with 30, 40, 50, 60. You don't have to do that, but that's another way that you would do it, right? So you would say int, my int 1 equal 30, 40, 50, 60, my set insert my int 1 comma my int 1 plus 4. That's another way you would insert. Okay. You want to
Okay,
type that
okay.
out? Yeah. So you can create another array to hold 30, 40, 50, 60 as a subset and then pass that array in the parameter when you tell it to insert.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, let me try to digest this. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Go ahead and stop screen share real quick, and so I can get moving on to the thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Professor.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, any other questions? All right, so I want to talk about the next one. I know some of you are moving on already and some of you are still working on it. Now, this is not due tonight, so you still have time to work on it and just make sure you submit it before Saturday. So here it goes in depth a little bit more with iterator. We touched on a little bit with iterator. You worked on using iterator it or IT, right? So the iterator is a way that we would access the data stored in that container or pointing to the item that's part of that container. Now, when you return an iterator, it's going to refer to the first element of that container set, or that set container. So it's going to point to the first. Now, because it's keeping the elements in order, it says the begin points to the element that goes first, following the container sorting criterion. So what that does for us is that it's always going to revert back. It's going to point back to the first element, right? When we use begin, okay? So you can use the begin member function as part of the set STL to say that's go to the first element, okay? So if the container is empty, the return iterator shall not be dereferenced. So in the case where we talk about empty set on Tuesday, right? When it's empty, there's no element to really access. So therefore, right, the return iterator, it would not be dereferenced. So an iterator to the first element of the container, if the set object is a const qualify, the function returns the const iterator. Now otherwise it returns the iterator. And you should know that it's bidirectional, meaning that it can go this way, it iterates up, or it can go the other way, it would iterate the other way. So when we do the begin, it's gonna go to the first, and we can iterate to the next one and the next one and the next one after that. And that's the whole point. So we can access the item, right, inside that container. So in example 2, again, we have include IO stream, we have include set, we have the main function. Inside it, we set up an array called myInt, and this array hold integer. And in this array, these are the values: 75, 23, 65, 42, and 13. Notice that it's not in order, right? And that's the reality, is that you get data sets and it's not perfect. It's not sorted ascending or anything like that. So we just have an array that contain numbers. Here you set up your set to hold integer, and it's called mySet. And what you're going to do is you are going to have that set contain 5 elements. Okay, so we're going to have it cout, mySet contains, and then this for loop right here allow us to use the container that we set up, we created, we declared, and we would use the iterator called it, and it's going to iterate starting from the first element, and it's going to place the value from the beginning, right? And so it's going to go from the beginning, which is the first, going to add the 5 elements. And it says that the iterator not equal mySet n, it's going to increment. So it's going to keep going until it reaches the limit right here, which is 5. Okay. Then our cout, what we're going to do is here we're using a pointer, we point back to it, which access the value, so that way we would show each value from that container. Okay, so this is another way we would elevate what we just learned in the last one, using an array and then changing that array and put it into a set, and then use a for loop to have it access each element position and, you know, tie that value to each of the position of our set, or point to it, and then be able to display it. Okay, so this is the second program. So let me go to my REPL right here. And I will run that for you. So we are iterating the set. Okay. So notice that once I have my set, when it's C out, right, it's going to give me in sorted ascending order 13, 23, 42, 65, 75, even though when we started from the beginning with an array that's not sorted. So with the set STL, that's a mechanism that's also built within. With the iterator, it's going to start with the beginning and it's going to associate that value to the position of the element in the set. So therefore, what you have is you have another way to create your set. And with this, we learn how to use dot begin and dot end. Okay, with the for loop. So now if you want to, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
I did. So this program is just to make the elements from smallest to biggest, correct?
Yeah, but it actually places it into the set container.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, not only that it's sorted, it places it into the set container and sorted. So, so data is really not in sequential like that, right? Like ideally that this is an abstract level where we human would think that, oh yeah, it would be like, 1 through whatever. But really it's pieces of data, and what that iterator would do is it would point to it in an organized way with the dot begin and the dot end. So you have to think about that, because really, when it puts the numbers in, it could be anywhere in the memory as a space. So when we cut this space, it could be here, it could be here, it could be there. So what that will do is it would associate the value to the position, so that way, yeah, we will get the sorted at the end.
Okay, thank you. And let's say, for example, I want to add more numbers into there. Will I replace the 5 with 7 if I want 7 numbers in there?
So if you start out with a larger array, right, like 7 numbers, yeah, you would give it a +7, because that would tell it that these are the number of elements in the parameter.
Good, thank you.
Or you can simply use insert like the last one, because remember, set it adjusts. So you can do an insert, but you got to point to where you want to insert. That would make it a little bit more optimized and efficient. So we want like the last program where it points to the 20, and then it's going to put the values after that. Okay. So for number 3, I want you to do example 2 first before you start adjusting it so you can see. Then I want you to change 75 and make it 55 or 13 or whatever number you like. Okay. I want you to use either a repeating number. Okay. Notice that 13 is already in that array. Okay. Or let's say that you would use, a different value. Okay. So you can see the output. Okay, so play with it. I want you to use, like, maybe put a 23 or a 13 or a 42 in place of 75 and see what it does. Rerun the program and describe your output and give me a screen capture. Okay, so first, create the example program, run it, check it out, right? See your output, and then make adjustment to it. Take out the 75 and make it another number, okay? And then run it again.
Hi, Professor.
Yes.
When I put the same numbers, why the numbers disappears after I run?
Say it again.
When I put the same numbers, like I put two 23,
Uh-huh.
and there's a only one 23s on the thing.
Yeah, remember that set has to be unique, right? We saw that at the beginning on page 1. And we learned that on Tuesday as well. You cannot have repetition of value. The const value has to be unique. So let's say if I put 23, you'll notice that I replace the 75, right? It disappeared because 23 is repeating. It's only going to include 123. That's the rule. Set has to contain unique value.
Oh, okay. That's it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So if you haven't taken 17C and when you get there, right, and they start going over set STL, you already got some of it covered in this class. So you should be able to pick it up and, you know, write more advanced program. Any question? So as you get through example 2 and then change that 75 to another number, rerun it, right? For the next one, for 4, what I want you to do is you edit that whole program after you complete the number 3, take out all the elements, okay? Meaning that you're gonna go into this array right here and clear it out. Just make it an empty, okay? No initialized value. So clear out all the values here, okay? And then I want you to run it and give me a screen capture and then explain to me what happens, okay? So what I'm trying to do is to show you how it works with the empty set. Okay. Now remember that we had 5 here. Okay. So if you clear out everything and leave that 5 here, what will happen? Okay. Or do we have to make adjustment here to make it appropriately work? Because we originally added 5 elements and then we change up one value. Then for 4, we take out all the initialized value in that array and see if it works. And that's going to lead you to the next one where we look at clear and empty. Any question? So 3 and 4 uses example 2, okay?
Hey, Professor, so you want us to remove everything from there, and then for my ints, we're going to change that to 0, correct?
So first remove it, run it and see.
I get an error when I remove everything.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, I was like, okay, well, what is she doing? Because I was like, I put 1, and I was like, 1 works, and I put 0, and I was like, okay, what if I put 0 in there? But yeah, I
Put
will keep
0,
on getting
so
an error.
put 0 and then see what happens.
0 appears if I have 1 on my ints, but if I leave 0 and 0, I'm pretty sure we'll get an error.
Mhm. Yeah, because number 1, right?
Mhm.
For array, you really have, because with the way we use it, it's not a dynamic array, so you have to give it some kind of value as in size, right?
Mhm.
So when we, and because if you didn't initialize it, it's gonna have C++ compiler is gonna have an issue there, right?
Yeah.
Right off the bat. That's automatic. That's easy. The second piece is the parameter here. You told it that it's cutting a set for, and you're gonna, iterate for 5 elements, but then you have no initialize, no constant value for the element. So yeah, it's gonna throw an error.
I noticed that if you put 0 on the constant value and you put the my int as 0 as well, it also puts up 0.
Yes,
Yes.
because it's still gonna return to that first element. Remember, right? The iterator is gonna point back to that. At least it would have at least 1, because when you go back over here, it says that when the container is empty, it return the iterator value. It shall not be dereferenced. That means that if you have nothing in the array to start, so for it to really dereference, then it's not gonna have anything.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like trying to figure out why, but
Mm-hmm. You're
you
welcome.
threw us on a loop.
I want you to test this part. That's number 4 is to test this part. Okay, and then also your knowledge of array as well, right? So this class is going to review a lot of the things that you learn in CIS5 and 17A and C++ in general. Okay, so for those of you who didn't catch that, when we clear this out, right, it's gonna give you an error, because number 1, for array, we have to tell it what size is our array, how many elements is in there if we don't initialize any value. So that's gonna get an error. Second is that we had declared my set, and we had used the parameter to say that it's gonna bring in the values from this array, and there are 5 values, so that's gonna catch an error there too. Now, if you put a 0, right, like Mario mentioned, and then also a 0 here, what that will still do is it can still dereference the 0. Okay, it's still going to have that first element position as 0, at first element as 0, and it would dereference that 0. But if you leave it blank, it's not going to be able to do that because it has nothing to dereference with. Okay, even if it is able to default back to the first element, it won't be able to show anything because there's nothing to show. Okay, question? Okay, so I'm going to talk about the next example and then the next few exercises, so that way we can move along. And then if you have something that you were stuck on, right, make sure you let me know, or if you want to catch me at the end, that's fine too. Okay. So in the next one, we're going to talk about clear content. So we're going to use a member function called clear in Set STL. So to clear, when you issue the clear, what that will do is it's going to remove all elements from the set container, right, which are destroyed, leaving the container to the size 0, which is empty set. Okay. So in example 3, again, you're using Set STL. Here's the main function. You start with telling the compiler on line 6 that you are creating a set holding integer, and your set name, your set is called mySet. We saw this before from the previous, from exercise 1, that we insert, so here we insert 100, 200, and 300 to mySet, right? And you'd say that here, insert 100, 200, 300 to mySet. Then we want to show that. So we would display by using cout mySet contain, and we would have the for loop with the iterator, right, to start from the first element, right, and it's going to go until, start from the begin, and it's going to iterate up until the end, right? As long as it's not at the end, it's going to iterate up, and it's going to reach, so it's going to show 100, 200, 300 for line 13 and 14. Then on line 17, we are issuing the clear. Okay, so what that does is it's going to destroy 100, 200, and 300. Okay. Then we are going to insert new values, 1101, 2202. Okay. Then we're going to show it again. So when we show it again, right, that would be complete. So let me show you the program here. So the first round, we inserted 100, 200, 300, and that was taken care of here, right? And to show that we have this for loop right here. Then line 17, we clear it, so that destroy the value from that we originally inserted, 100, 200, 300, got rid of those. Then we reinsert new ones, so we insert 1101 and 2202. And those show, and we use the second for loop to show, right, to access the values from that set, from the set, right, the new values, and that is shown here. Okay. So this shows you how to use the clear member function in Set STL. Okay. And this we saw previously from the last exercise, creating that for loop using begin and not end. So for number 5, you would create the example 3 program, run it, okay, and tell me what values were cleared. Okay. Then after that, give me a screen capture, an explanation. Then for 6, I want you to modify your program, example 3 program, change my set.clear to my set.insert 0. Okay. And then rerun the program. So instead of clearing out 100, 200, 300, what we will do is we won't clear it. We would just insert a 0 and then 1101 and 1102. So we have an additional insert in place of a clear. Give me the screen capture. Tell me what you see Okay. So I want the purpose in this is I want you to see the effect of using this member function clear, right? And so in the 5 and 6, that shows you can determine the difference, right? One, when we run it, it clears it, it gives us the new value when we insert it, right? It didn't keep the old ones, the first 3. Then for the 6, we replaced the clear, like we never cleared it, so it should show 100, 200, 300, 1101, 2200, 0, 1101, and 2202. So we insert another one, which is 0. Okay, so 0 should go in the front because it should give you sorted. Any question? It is similar to lists. You're gonna see some similar member functions with lists as well. So you guys, when you had that number that you had put in the chat, that is actually address. Their address, just location where those values used to be. Okay, and same thing when Valerie put, so when you get a bunch of numbers, they're addresses. So when you took away in the last exercise, when you clear out that array, what it says that there used to be something here, it created a location for it, but it can't find the values anymore as you clear out the array. So it, so it depends on whether you're using online compiler, regular compiler. Sometimes it just give you the address, which is the location where the values used to be. So you guys need to start looking at it and say, oh, that's an address, right? Some system, right, it depends too on the language compiler or interpreter. Some system, it will give you like f, x, or 0 times f, blah, 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 hexadecimal value. On these, right, either using IDE or online compiler, you just see a bunch of numbers. And whenever you see a negative to start with, or like a long length number that's not supposed to be your value, that's just simply memory address. And we're going to do quite a few of these so you can see. So logically, it actually it has those locations for your values. Now with the clear member function, you notice that we don't have to include anything there if we want to clear all. Okay. So what we did in the last exercise where you guys manually clearing everything out in the array, that's not the right way. So what I did there is I want to show you how that was. And then technically when we're clearing out the set, right, you can use the clear. And then you can also, there are other member function where you can remove the specific, but For now, we looking at number 5 and 6 is we learn how to clear the set content. So we don't manually clear it out in our code. We issue the function for it. So as it removed the values or destroyed the value, it released the memory address back to the system, and that can be used for other values like, you know, your new insert. Okay. Any questions? Okay, no questions? You only got one more to go after example 3, so take your time. So when we get to the university level, right, you going into, let's say you transfer to UCR or Cal Poly Pomona or CSU. A lot of the times, if you coming in with the credits for C++, like 17AC, or even, you know, part of this class, they expect you to have the foundation knowledge, and they would dive right into a topic that would have some of, you know, this as foundation. So just be prepared, and the only way that you're going to get better in programming is to program. I believe that. I mean, some people, you know, they're just gifted, right? For me, you know, to brush up my skill, I just have to code. So I encourage you to, and it allows you to be more innovative and looking at how to solve problems differently every time. So you know, and keep the material. You can come back and see how you would improve it. Okay, any questions? With 3, example 3. So next week we have permutation and we're gonna start going into combinatorics. So we're gonna look at how we can look at the subsets ordered and not ordered and so forth. So we're gonna look at how to interpret combinations of things, because you see this in programming a lot, right? Like in games, in selections, in data, and in people purchasing stuff online. So with the options that they're given. Don't forget about the homework this week. Okay. So take time to do the review so you can prepare for the quiz next week. Okay, so I'm going to touch on example 4. These are pretty short programs, so it doesn't take very long to write. And they are very similar, so sometime when you go from one to the other, right, you just simply make some adjustment and save it as another file. So here we go. Empty set, we touch on this in the theory part, which is on Tuesday, mathematical theory part. And earlier in example 3, we saw that it could, when we do the clear, it sized down that set to be 0. So you can also use empty to return the set is empty as 0. The function does not modify the container in any way. To clear the content, you have to clear. You have to use the clear member function like what we did in example 3. Now, with the empty is that this doesn't really change the actual value inside that set. All it's going to tell the system is that, oh, it's going to size it to 0. Okay. So it would return the value true if the container size is 0, false otherwise. So if you're trying to do an empty and you still have content or values inside your set, it's going to return false. So now when we look at this program, what we see is same thing, include set IO stream so we can display our value. We have a main function. We declare our set as my set and it holds integer. We insert 20, 30, and 10 into the set. And then we would have it see out my set contains, that's just a string. Then we would use a while loop. Okay. So in the while loop, it says while my set is not empty, remember there's an exclamation in the front, see out, right, display the value from the beginning. It points to the beginning value of the set, right? So it's going to show all of that. Okay, so here is my program. But wait, okay, then as soon as it shows it, what you're doing here in line 16 is that it says my set erase, my set begin. So when that line when you have that line in the program, when the compiler gets to that line, what it's going to do is going to remove, it's going to erase 10, 20, and 30 by that order, okay? Because it's already showed it, then we want to get rid of it. We want to erase those values for our set, okay? So that means that the values are no longer in the set after it display. After line 15, when it gets to line 16, those values are gone, okay? And that's it. Okay, so this is a way that we can clean it up after we show it, right? and it doesn't take up memory space anymore, or the values are no longer there anymore. Question?
So if we try to cout it again, it wouldn't show anything.
No. So if you try to add another for loop right after that, right? Yeah, because you told it to erase. But if you comment out that line, it's still going to show. So in example 4, we show how to insert values into the set. We show how we can use like a loop, right, to display the values of the elements inside that set. Instead of using for, you can also use while, of course, but we would show and then erase, show and then erase, show and then erase. So we simply clean up our set as it showed. Right after it showed, it's going to erase. Okay? So what I want you to do is test the example 4 in your IDE, run it, take a screen capture, and explain to me the while loop, okay, in the relation to the input, the output. And then that's it. Any question? Let me check chat. No question in chat. And know that these are only a few member functions that I'm showing you for the time span. I want to give student enough time, ample amount of time, right, to go through and do these so you can see the differences. But yeah, there are others, so you can refer to documentation or even online resources so you can practice more if you like using it. There are many different STL, but and so this is a way that we can apply what we talk about in math, and so you can see it. So when you program this, how do you really look at a set and put that into programming? And we would learn different functionality with that library, so that way we can add values, we can remove values, we can show and then remove values. So that way you would apply your concept. Okay. Any question? So again, the last piece is to complete example 4, run it, right? Take a screen capture, take a look at the while loop there, and explain to me what that while loop means. Okay. Any question? If you complete everything, you have everything, then go ahead and upload your document with your screen capture on Canvas, so you can get that grade. I can grade it. And then before you leave, put your full name into chat, because I still do find some students that are not using their full name when they log in. So when I see the participant's name, if you're using a nickname, I can't tell who that is. So I would go back to the chat log and I would see if you type in your name. Okay. And I will update your attendance for this week, probably tomorrow. But don't forget the homework. Get the homework done so you don't get point deduction next week. Okay. I'll stay on until 8. So if you have questions on the specific, I can address that. Thank you. Have a good night if you're taking off. Have a good weekend. Let me know if you have questions. You're welcome. Have a good night if you're taking off. I'll be on until 8 if you have questions. Any questions? No? Okay.
I have an old question, but
Sure. That's okay. What's up?
it's basically still from the first one. Like I understand everything else after it, but I really don't understand what this pair thing is. Like I'm looking it up on the C++ reference, and it says it's like a class template. I just don't really understand.
What don't you understand? Repeat the question for me. You said
Iterator.
you look the iterator?
In line 8
Line 8.
here.
For example 1?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. For pair. Okay, let me go back to that. Let me see. You're looking at C++?
Mm-hmm. The C++ reference.
Uh-huh. Let me see what they state here. So, because sometimes a lot of it is very technical. Okay, so it says as a class template provides a way to store 2 heterogeneous objects in a single unit. Meaning what? That means that it's one location, but it's able to store 2 things, right? So such as could be an iterator and a value, right? So an example of this is like you would associate something with another value. And it's a way that we can quickly access it or use it in a parameter. Okay. Now, it says if neither T1 nor T2 is possible CV qualified class type and non-trivial destructor array thereof destructor pair is trivial. And some of their example can be hard to really see, right? Because here they just say that, oh, there's different versions of C++. So when you look in the template up here, what that does is it's really a way that we can group 2 things into one location. That's what we mean by pair. So in our program, let's go back to our document. Okay, so for line 8, right? Line 8, what we're saying pair here is that with all of this, what we're going to associate is that we would utilize 2 objects that's going to be in one logical location of memory for our program. then inside this, what we have is we have a set and the iterator. And what that iterator is going to do is think of it like placement position for your element. But technically, your values are everywhere, right? Like, let's say that I put 25 over here and then 24 over here, but it needs to put it together when it shows it to you, when it outputs is in sorted. We need to have it sorted in the set. So what that will do for us is that it's going to use the pair to tie the two things together, the location of the value and where it's going to place it in your container that you created called my set. Okay, so when we insert the value, what that will do is that it's going to go from 1 to whatever numbers that we would insert. But in the case where you get to 13, it's going to say, oh, instead of starting at the first element, it's going to go to the number 20 and it's going to start there. It's going to be there. That's going to point to that 20, and it's going to say that that's going to be where we're going to add new values. So treat 20 as the first. So what that pair does for us is it would tie the position of the element in that set to the value as it iterates forward to the right to increase our set. Okay, so I hope I give you a little bit better. So that pair throws you off because all that is just a way that we can take two things and put it into one location. Because technically in C++, when you create a variable, all that does is it's a place in the memory and you use a name to identify it, right? So the computer, what it does is it has an address associated with that name. Now, what if we wanted to make multiple things? We want to have two things in that location. So you would have one address that's going to have two objects. Okay, so what that pair does for us is it's going to have an address in the memory and it's going to tie two things together. Okay, but when we do an array, what that does is that, yes, it is a container, but when you initialize the value, you would still have the index that's going to point to that value. So, you know, it's logically it's a location, but you still have values in other location that's associated with it. Okay, does that help? Or I just confuse you more?
Well, I think now I know at least what the pair is doing, so it was helpful. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So the best way that if you're trying to look at and see how it's gonna, the effect of it is that if you comment out something, even if it throws an error in the compiler, it's gonna tell you what that, you know, sometimes I'll say that line error, and it's gonna give you a hint on what that error would mean depending on the debugging library. But at least with that, you would see how the effect would be, or if you modify something throughout, right, the program, to see how the program is going to be affected, how it's going to output compared to that, or what it's doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have one more question. I don't know if anybody else is going to ask a question.
That's
or-
okay. It seems like no one else is saying something, so go ahead.
I was also reading, and it said that in the set, the value is also the key, like it also identifies itself. Could you kind of like explain a little bit more what they mean by that?
So a set, are you talking about the first part right here? I remember, I recall I put that in there for right here. Okay. So a set is an associative container which contains a sorted set of unique objects of type key. Each element may occur only once, so no duplicates allowed. The value of the elements in set cannot be modified in the container. So because it is an identifier, it has to be unique. and the values that we see in the set is a constant. It's a number. And constant, once you initialize it, you cannot update it, right? Because it's not a storage, it's not a location in a memory where, like a variable. So if you say variable A is this, well, you can always change the content of that variable. But now if it's just a constant, if it's a value, right, like 24 or 25, you cannot change that value. It's there. Once you have it as a constant, that's the value. So what they're saying here is they use it to also identify. An identifier has to be unique. You cannot have two variables that are the same, right? You cannot have two array that has the same name. Okay. So in C++ or in programming, we cannot have identifiers that are a duplicate. Therefore, right, the values have to be unique, and it uses the value as the key. So whenever, it's like saying, oh, where is 24? It knows exactly where that is because it identifies based on also the iterator. Its job is to point to that location, but 24 is 24. It's like a name. Okay. It's not going to change. It's static. It's in the container. So it's like saying this: there's a family of 6, and in that family everybody has a unique name, and you would use that unique name to identify the individual, and that person will never have a change of name. And what that key is it's a way that we would identify that value of what that value is, of what it is. Okay.
But the key itself is the same. Also, the value.
It's 24, and that's it.
Okay, it's kind of confusing, but I understand.
Yeah, a lot of the time, because they make it where it's higher level in explanation of these technical things. Yeah, sometimes it gets a little convoluted, but ultimately it is an identifier. It's like how your parents give you that name, and that's gonna stick with you for life. And everybody knows you as that name, and or like the government give us a social security number, they identify us by that number, and as and you are that number. That's what it's saying in that group. Okay. Other questions?
Oh, hello?
Yes, Alexis.
Yes, I just wanted to ask if you were gonna be available tomorrow if we had because I'm still working on it.
Yeah. Well, tomorrow I have meetings in the morning. So if you want to schedule something like from 9 to 12, I have a few employers, and we're trying to launch an apprenticeship program. So we're meeting with some of the employers. So if you like to schedule something, just drop me an email. But yeah, afternoon would be okay. I don't have anything in the afternoon.
Okay. And
Or if you want later in the evening, that's okay. But shoot me an email, give me some advance time so that way I'm not doing something else.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And
All
also
right.
ask how long should the I guess the kind of explanation be? Because you said you wanted the screenshots plus.
Yeah, screenshot. The explanation, a couple sentences is okay,
Okay.
as long as it encapsulate what you intend to tell me. Some
Okay.
students, they write a whole paragraph if that's what they want, and that's what they want. But yeah, at least a couple sentences is okay. As long as it convey the main idea, I get it. Okay?
Okay. Okay, that's it.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Oh, welcome. Any other questions?